Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Blair, and here's her story. I'm a single mother of two wonderful children. For almost 2 years, I have come to terms with the fact that my children were better off with their grandparents than me. I was so fucked up from postpartum depression and anxiety on top of pre-existing mental illnesses that sacrificing my last chance to nurture my baby under the age of 1 was worth their well-being, and not to mention my son, whose father moved to another province for work, etc., 2 months before his sister was born. Will I ever forgive myself for all of this? Probably not, even though not one of the mental illnesses I have was asked for. And I also did not ask to be promised a dream, only to be delivered a nightmare. But we'll get to that. This letter will be a tale of coming back to life, reanimating the person I used to be and combining it with the person I am now. This is a story of finding a way to rescue myself from the Marianas Trench of depression, and I must say, being bipolar among other things, I have never once encountered such a depression. I am 33 and have a pretty extraordinary life so far, including many depressions. But this was by far the worst. Even that is an understatement. In August of 2012, I almost lost my life to the hands of my ex-fiance. We had been in a physical fight brought on by months of narcissistic torment, and I am no saint either. He strangled me nearly to death. I then grabbed my essentials and left to go live with my mother and stepfather, leaving most of my belongings in the garage and my cats behind. After 3 weeks, I found an apartment on my folks' street. After briefly dating another man, I broke it off due to still truly loving my ex. During this time, I acquired an injury during a judo class that rendered me useless for 5 weeks. I had to lay completely still in bed, alone, having much time to contemplate how my soul truly felt. Why can I not forgive this man more than myself? Because he tried to choke you to death? And by chance, I came across a YouTube video that completely inspired me. A mother who lost her son to gang violence at the age of 15 had now forgiven the man, also 15 at the time of a shootout murder. Over time, he has since been released, having served his time, and now lives next door to this amazing woman, helping to take care of her as if she were his surrogate mother. This blew my mind, and in that single moment, I forgave my ex. Stupidest thing you could ever do. Okay? Just because one rarity works out, the media wants to push this in front of everybody and make you susceptible to abuse all over again. Okay? Just because you see something online that's inspiring, okay, doesn't mean you throw caution to the wind and roll dice. Now, understandably, this kid killed her son, but they were both 15 when it happened. Okay? And this is an extreme rarity, not the norm where they meet up and live happily ever after. That's a rarity. That's a pipe dream. You are looking for any validation you could give yourself in order to go back to him. Probably, and I'm imagining, probably because this issue didn't start with this guy. This starts way sooner. Way sooner. He was a grown-ass man when he tried to kill you, right? When he tried to strangle you. This kid was 15. Big difference. Big difference. The forgiveness washed over me like a freeing flood. That's not forgiveness. That's an excuse that you could sell yourself. Don't confuse forgiveness for making an excuse so you can excuse yourself for going back to him. So you can validate your own decision to be with the narcissist. That's not forgiveness. It's not. It's validating your own decision, which you know is wrong, which is why you had to seek out this stuff on YouTube or whatever, some other example you can hold up and say, see, this could work for me. And it's bullshit. I called him and we went for a drive and had to park on the side of the highway because all we could do is cry and hold each other. He couldn't believe I would forgive him so wholly. Of course not. True love is the strangest yet most amazing thing, or so I thought. That's not true love. That's he thinking he hit the narcissistic abuse jackpot. So on Valentine's Day 2013, he said of his own accord that he wanted to marry me for me to have his baby because he wanted to lock me down, never to lose me again. He also promised to go to therapy and to be there for me and the baby and our two other amazing children, and to stop gigging and touring as to focus on our family health and well-being. Let's just say he ended up reneging on everything but the baby. And though it sounds like I am complaining, I love my baby girl and would never change her or how she came to be for the world. But to have your womb hijacked and to be abandoned, no shit, over 100 times by a narcissist who refuses to get help is horrendous and utterly futile. Listen, it takes two to tango. Okay? Was this the first child? I mean, it said you had for your baby and two other amazing children. So did you already have two kids with him and then he was gonna lock you down? Or was this the first baby and then you had two kids after that? I mean, if you already had two kids with him, you didn't hijack your uterus. And remember, you had to go seek out help, not help, some sort of validating excuse to be with him in the first place. He's not hijacking your uterus. You're opening it up to him. Why? Because you're suffering from another sort of abuse that put you on the road to be with this guy in the first place. He's the symptom, not the cause. A man who I thought I truly loved and truly loved me kept telling me to have an abortion every time he would get enough of his narcissistic supply and leave my ass high and dry. There was no way I was having an abortion when we planned this child together out of forgiveness and love. So I continued to do all the things to get better, therapy and the like. This was just the beginning of my postpartum anxiety. See, even though he was the one who said, yeah, we'll have a baby, I want to lock you down. And then he was saying, abort, I don't care if you have an abortion. Look, I think the baby was, even though it was his idea, once it was your way to keep him. You know, it goes both ways, and it's because of whatever abuse you suffered in your past. That year I lost two friends to suicide. One after my daughter was born. One of those friends had a twin brother who was also a dear friend who hanged himself the year before. This affected me deeply and I still cry for them. Then my cat Zeus passed away lying out on the sidewalk in the sun. I found him. He was still limp and warm. He was like a son to me. My son calls him his brother. A people whisperer, as I referred to him. High fives and walks to the park. Boy Zeus was the wizard of cats, an amazing soul. I was 6 months pregnant, heartbroken, and alone. I had puked my guts up for 6 straight months, lost 20 pounds, which I couldn't afford to lose, and ended up in the hospital twice. Next, I had to move to a large apartment to accommodate the little girl I was bringing into the world, and my amazing little boy. We had been living in a 1-bedroom apartment, my son in the bedroom, my bed in the living room. And I was humping my ass up 3 flights of stairs, 7 months pregnant, with my friends moving stuff in. So you already had 2 kids with this guy. So why would he need to get you pregnant a 3rd time to lock you down? The night I was humping my ass up 3 flights of stairs, 7 months pregnant, with friends moving my stuff in, was the very night my ex was playing a huge show in my city in a famous band. He got to be the rock star while I sat alone, yet with child, amid the boxes of my life. The last 4 months of my pregnancy consisted of trying to fit in a tiny tub and get out of it on my own, puking randomly, having to massage myself, nightmares and hot flashes almost every day and night. trying to take care of my son the best I could, and a landlord who wanted to move his family members in a month after I signed the lease to live there for a year. I ended up in a tenancy board hearing 3 days away from my scheduled C-section in a room at the tenancy board, 3 fucking days before major abdominal surgery and the birth of my child. I'm even like, what the fuck? However, I won the case and was awarded 60 extra days in the unit, which gave me enough time to finally, after 4 years of being on a waiting list, acquire a suitable home with our local housing authority 2 weeks before I could have potentially been rendered homeless again. My daughter was the most beautiful baby girl I had ever seen, and yet her father was not there to be a part of her birth and beauty. First, I cried tears of joy, but at the same time, I felt myself trying to hide the fact that I was also crying for my daughter and her father. How is this conversation going to go over when she starts asking questions? Is what I thought splayed out like Christ on a cold steel operating table. This is a perfect example of my postpartum depressed and anxious mind thinking way too far into the future, which is normally productive. But in this case, it made everything worse. After that wonderfully melancholy day that they cut me open to release my baby from my body, 4 weeks later, after a day and a half of her not being able to keep anything down, but still wanting to nurse, we took my daughter to our local hospital. The next morning, she had been diagnosed with pyloric stenosis, the closing over of the pylorus located at the bottom of the stomach that allows digested food to pass into the bowel. And I traveled with her in an ambulance for 5 hours. She screamed for the last 2 hours as my parents and son drove closely behind, following us to the mainland. The IWK Children's Hospital staff saved my daughter's life, but the memory of her broken cries still haunt me. It broke me, and her father, again, was not there. The night before her surgery, I kept texting him to let me call because I was bawling my eyes out, and he said no. He had to work in the morning and he had to go to sleep. But he also said he wouldn't be available to call until later in the afternoon when her surgery was scheduled for 7 to 8 a.m. Too busy to make sure his daughter lived through her surgery, but somehow shortly after her amazing recovery, I became the enemy, the bad mother, the castaway, fed to the wolves for the good of the pack. I don't really feel like getting into what happened with my family as things are going well and I want everyone to be happy. Well, you better get into it eventually, because that's what caused all of this. Look, and I tried to tell you this behind the scenes a little bit. You knew what this guy was going in. He had already choked you out. He's some kind of wannabe rock star. Obviously, he must have some sort of talent if he was able to play with a famous band and he's touring and gigging. I mean, did you really think you were going to be able to change this guy after he choked you out and nearly killed you? And you had to find some story on YouTube to make it okay, and then he starts doing this? I mean, did you think you were going to tame the wannabe rock star? And this is all because, like I said, he is the symptom, not the cause. What you don't want to talk about is what happened with your family. I would assume is the cause of all of this. So I'll refrain from speaking about it, but I was alone, completely isolated, not eating, not showering, sleeping 14 hours a day. Developed delayed sleep phase syndrome and struggled to fix my circadian rhythm. And then I had an MRI to check on the arachnoid cyst that had been discovered on my brain due to being diagnosed with migraine disorder 6 years prior, to only find out it was growing. And I saw the pictures and they cut her whole head open. And as scared as I was, I saw an opportunity. If this cyst was in any way causing my depression to be worse than normal, I'm getting the fucker taken out. And it came out. The worst fear being wheeled down a hallway by a stranger into a room full of other strangers you have to trust your life with. Getting onto that cold steel table again and crying, exclaiming to the nurses that I was not a fucking pussy, while wiping tears away as if they didn't notice. 7 hours after I woke up from receiving a full craniotomy, I went back to my home hotel room instead, as I didn't feel comfortable to even be in the hospital because I was so messed up mentally. I can't believe they even let you leave. My ex had come back for a while at that point, but 2 days after the surgery, we got into an argument. It turned into him calling me down and yelling me about things I could not change or understand. He flicked his cigarette ash on my surgical site and abandoned me for the last time. I had no choice but to be completely alone during my healing and had to take care of myself, which I could not even do prior to the surgery. A couple weeks later, he tried to contact me through email. A few months later, he tried to contact me through text. I finally decided, after everything he put my children and I through, I just wouldn't reply. I was done. I wouldn't pine for him and the family we planned together. I would focus on me and let this depression consume me to almost the point of death. I sat side by side with suicide for over a year, taking life a breath at a time, trying not to look at the perpetual black cloud hanging out with me in my living room as I lay on the couch, completely isolated in my sickness and terror. I have to mention that during this time, my daughter was diagnosed with having a gene mutation for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a form of heart disease affecting the atrial part of the heart. We knew there was a 50-50 chance of her developing this disease, but we felt having a child to also give our love was worth the risk. What? And her life is still not regrettable in any way. I would howl to loud music in my basement so my neighbors wouldn't hear. I was destroyed when I knew my daughter had this disease. I was shattered, obliterated, dust. But you knew there was a 50-50 chance going in. I mean, you took so many chances with this guy over something you saw on YouTube where a murderer's mother forgave him. The reason this happened is whatever you're avoiding in your past, in your childhood. Again, these are all symptoms. I couldn't even hold her most days. I wanted death and to give her my heart, but I have 2 children that need me. The best thing I could do was survive each day, soak in that marinade of hellish guilt and anguish. If I died, I died. If I didn't, I'd be stronger than before and be able to be there for my children in a way I couldn't for so long. I opted for the latter. In late November 2015, I had a dream that my grandmother decided to visit, which is uncanny, as she passed away 4 years ago during the same month. After the dream, I awoke feeling completely different and loved. I felt more energy than I had in years and jumped out of bed and cleaned my whole house. I felt somewhat alive again, somewhat stronger. I didn't know if this was a fluke or if it would last, but I was going for it. I couldn't let the light go that was shining through a tiny crack in the free fall of darkness I was seemingly solidified in. This was all for my children, and I had to forgive myself. My anxiety lessened quite a bit, though didn't fully disappear. My depression had lifted enough so I can grab a hold of this Hail Mary, probably due to the help of a new antidepressant in therapy, and push myself 500% to hold on to life with all I had. This was for my children. I had failed them unintentionally and still feel the need to do it all for them. They kept me alive, and oddly enough, so did the company of suicide, constantly tempting and terrifying me from across the room to no end about the irreversible choice to die. This was my last chance, and the fuck I was going to let anyone, including myself, take it away from me. Within the first 2 weeks of the depression lifting enough to function, I started talking taking my kids all by myself. I did eventually have some help from friends, but that didn't work out. I am now going I'm now back to doing it on my own. This is very important to understand as I truly couldn't do anything alone. I didn't believe I could as the hard I didn't believe I could as the harder I tried, the worse things became. I had my life blown up and felt I lost my children, my future husband and stepdaughter, my mother and stepfather, and half of my extended family members in one fell swoop. I guess this is how people in war-torn countries feel, except they can't get their families back. Mental illness is a sentence for life for most of us sufferers. It's something that will always have to be addressed and looked after. Maintenance is required for all our bodies and therefore, more importantly, for our brains. The sooner people understand and accept this, the sooner the stigma will melt away. Just like my postpartum depression and anxiety did, but I could not push the river. I had to let the depression take its course and make every decision wisely. I had to let time take its time and survive. If that meant conserving my energy by not moving for a year, then so be it. And in doing so, I was eventually given the opportunity to get well and take my children back. I was able to feel grateful and what happiness feels like again. I was able to function enough most days to be a mother to my kids and take care of myself as well. I was at the point of considering a legal will. I was pushed by my ex writing horrible, slanderous songs about me and posting them online. I had to deal with post-traumatic stress disorder from what happened due to the postpartum depression and anxiety, and from all the shit that happened to me in my life. I have mostly overcome. I will never be able to fully express what my children and I had to go through. I could never do it justice. It will never be the same again, but I can at least try to help others who may feel completely alone, isolated in their illness or their situational despair. And even if I fail to keep this going, at least I gave it my all and learned so much. In 2015, when the depression started lifting, I kept saying to my best friend that I felt even though it was winter, I felt like spring, a rebirth. I came out forged like steel, stronger and more knowledgeable, a warrior. I walked through the flames to the other side. I'm still burned, I'm still healing, but I made it. No more living dead, girl. Life hacks for life, literally. Ollie, there's so many other stories I need to tell. I am sorry at the same time for this being such a long letter. I am so grateful to you, Charlene, and everyone on the channel for being there for each other. I hope I can get more in depth with the fact I believe I have been narcissistically abused my whole life by my mother and stepfather. Well, I'm glad you finally got to that at the end of the letter. A lot of very stressful situations are still going on. There is never a final discard with the narcissist, meaning my ex. I hope that over time I can fully get my story out and also help others like you do along the way. Sincerely, Blair. All right, Blair. Look, I understand you have mental illnesses and you have a lot of medical conditions in your past. Okay? You need to understand all of this that happened in your late life is because you haven't dealt with what happened with your mother and stepfather. That's where it all starts. Okay? Why would your mother and stepfather even let you go back to this guy after you had to run to their house after he tried to kill you? There is a lot more going on to this story. You took calculated risk after calculated risk after calculated risk to try to lock this guy down. Okay? And you hold on to these little morsels that the narcissist throws out to you. Okay? Because he said it once that, yeah, let's have a family and I'll lock you down. You hold on to the narcissist crumbs. They're lying, deceitful crumbs. And then the whole time you let them run roughshod through your life. You allow yourself to make bad decisions where your daughter has a 50-50 chance at at a dangerous heart condition. And I'm going to be honest with you, when you say you're broken and destroyed and howling in your basement, okay, people on the outside who are watching this and watching you make decisions, okay, are going to have a very hard time empathizing with all these decisions. Like, oh my God, is this just Blair just looking for attention, being Blair? And I'm sure this is all stuff you've heard. And I'm not saying this to pick on you. I'm saying this to wake you up, to have you deal with the actual problem that's causing all this. Because I saw it coming, and I saw it when you mentioned, I saw it coming before you even mentioned you didn't want to get in to your home, to your mother and stepfather because it's going good, but you admit at the end, that's where it all comes from. You are going to get caught in the same cycle if you only concentrate on what happened with this guy. This guy is who he is. He's a wannabe rock star. He has some talent. He goes gigging all over the place. I mean, did you really think after him strangling you, he was going to come and do all this? Deep down, I don't think you did. But the challenge of taming that beast, of someone who I think has abandonment issues and low self-esteem issues, to bag somebody like that and can control that beast, would be a hell of a shot for your self-esteem and your confidence. And believe me, I've seen this mistake happen with over and over again with tons of people on my channel. You have to deal with what happened to you in your past, because that's the root cause of all this. You have to stop hanging on the narcissist crumbs that they throw you in times to get what they want. You will never listen, if his daughter is having surgery and he feels he needs to work, then that says about him. I mean, that should tell you everything you need to know. If I found out my daughter had surgery, I'd walk home to get there. I'd walk back to New Jersey to get there. Regardless. Though they'd never tell me. So, I understand you have a history of mental illness and other medical conditions. And I saw how they cut your head open from the craniotomy and other things. All right? Just another word of advice for you. Okay? And I don't know how easy or difficult this is going to be for you, but you're going to have to make a conscious decision to control your emotions better when things go wrong. When you're howling in your basement like this and carrying on, okay, and everything is devastating to you, and I understand you've gone through some bad stuff, friends, suicide, and look, I'm just going to say, Canada is completely fucked up. Canada's completely fucked up there. So's Europe. So's the UK. Canada's completely fucked up. I didn't realize. And I have a lot of Canadian subscribers, and most of you are going to come like, yeah, Canada's fucked up. Canada's fucked up. And I think part of the problem up there is, it's just more bullshit. Canada has this thing of being, oh, they're so nice, and they're bullshit. Canadians are the most fucking passive-aggressive people I have ever met in my life. They're bullshit. Not you guys on my channel, you know what I mean. By and large, your country is full of a bunch of passive-aggressive fucking liars up there. It's crazy. Canada's fucked up. And I see these stories coming out of there more and more. And it's just, and I have a lot of friends in Canada. You have to do a better job. You have to be conscious of this. You can't be howling. You can't be carrying on, because then they're just going to call you crazy. They're going to keep up saying it's your mental illness, it's your crazy. Okay? You need to understand what happened at home. And if you understand where you were broken at home, you're going to understand how you ended up with this guy to begin with and why you put up all this and just let him get away with his friggin' crumbs of lies that you hold on to thinking it means anything to them. It doesn't. So, thank you so much for your contribution and your story. I hope this helps. I hope you don't think I'm picking on you or I'm being overly harsh, but I'm trying to wake you up here. Okay, because there's 3 kids involved, a child with a pretty serious heart condition, and they need their mom. Okay? You can't be howling in the bed, and I understand you're howling over your daughter and upset. There has to be some control now. Otherwise, this is going to happen over and over again. So, I hope this helps. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just sponsor the channel in general, help keep the bills paid, keep the channel growing, because this channel is still sponsored 100% by contributions from you guys. So you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. And if you're still unclear, wait for the instructional video link to pop up on the screen at the end of this video to walk you through all of that. Please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been the Narcissistic Resistance. Take care.